right, David, it's great talking to you again. Last time we talked was for Just Swipe, and now we're going a different route with The Curse of Wolf Mountain. And
Totally
before we
different.
say that, I recently saw you in Hunt Club. Dude, you were so great in that movie.
Thank you.
Holy cow. Like, I have never seen that side of you, but then, we get so to find out that you actually directed The Curse of Wolf Mountain, that just made it more exciting when I
Oh,
found out.
thanks, man. Yeah, and on films like Hunt Club, where these shoot schedules are so tough to make, we had 12 days to shoot that movie. I shot a lot of what we call the second unit or B unit stuff, which normally, when you have a B unit on films, they're more of knocking off establishing shots and some stuff that's MOS without sound. But in other films, and I learned this when I did a mini series called The Sons of Liberty, you can really have true B units that are shooting proper sound and action and dialogue and everything, if you're having trouble making your schedule. And we had a lot of splitting of units on that film. It's really where I learned it as an actor, that you can do this and still come out with great performances and great stuff. So on Hunt Club, I worked that B unit a lot when I wasn't acting in the film and dealing with other stuff. I was out there with a camera, knocking off action sequences and full scenes. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, and that brought us to Wolf Mountain, and this one I did direct, so I can't shoot a B unit myself because there's not two of me. But what I did do is I did give stunts their own camera to shoot stunt sequences. When you do stunts, normally you're shooting in pieces. So we're getting this shot of the sword, we're getting an insert of the sword getting into the flesh, we're getting the backside of the sword coming out, we're getting the blood splatter, so there's all these little pieces to formulate the shots, and they're tedious and time consuming. So that was a perfect opportunity for me to say, you guys know what you're doing, go shoot the stunt pieces, and then I'll come in for the final stuff and the performance.
That's awesome. So I understand that Keli Price wrote the script, and of course he's the main character. So how did that happen when you guys collaborated? Like, you were going to direct the film, and then he came up with the screenplay. How did that all come about?
So Kelly and I met on a film called It'll Come to Me. There's been a lot of films lately. It was we did a film together in China. Underdogs Rising, that's what it's called, Underdogs Rising. And I had directed second unit on Underdogs Rising. I ended up producing another film for this Chinese group called Painted Beauty, which should be out soon. And I thought he was a wonderful actor, and we stayed in touch and friends. And I put him on my film Reboot Camp to play my brother. And I thought, wow, we're pretty good as brothers. And so I'll put him in another film. And I put him in Just Swipe, which you referenced already. But on this one, right after we shot Just Swipe right in the middle of lockdown,
Yeah.
right? And so that movie worked really well because it was basically 8 days in a house. And we used the Sinatra state. We dressed different rooms to look like different places. And we were very contained, quarantine set. And because that premise was two people who find each other on a dating app in lockdown, they were talking like you and I are talking right now to the computer. So
Yeah.
I, as an actor, I had knocked off 50 pages in one day, 50. That's a lot of dialogue, which is not easy to do. But the point is, I could do it. We could shoot like that because the camera was locked off and I was talking to you like I am now. So for me to knock off 50 pages does not take a whole lot of time. So we were able to do that movie in 8 days. And what I realized as a producer is, in the middle of these really scary times where everybody was masked all the time and everybody was getting tested every day, and it was just, we were petrified someone was going to get sick and we'd get shut down. So the less days, the less risk of someone getting sick. So we shot that in 8 days. Nobody got sick. We got it done. And we thought, geez, maybe we can do another one because I'm crazy in 8 days as well. Of course, killing 9 people with stunts and blood and weapons, and that is not something to try in 8 days. Having
Yeah.
said that, that's all I can muster for Wolf Mountain. So we shot 2 days at this house, the Hero House, and then 6 days on the mountain, which was outside, which I figured again would be less risk of people getting sick. The vaccine still had not come out. And so Kelly was like, let's go shoot a movie in the woods. And I got an idea. We'll have these hikers, and it'll be this haunted mountain, and maybe it's a wolf mountain. And so we started brainstorming a few ideas. We were on our Christmas holidays, and he was sending me pages and I was sending him back notes. And eventually we got to a draft that I thought was there. And I sent it out to some cast I knew, like my go-tos, like Eddie McClintock, who was also in Reboot Camp with me, and he's a wonderful actor who's very good with comedy. Matt Rife, who's a stand-up comedian. And I said, I love comedy. I come from the comedy world. I'm going to find comedic beats within this script, and I'm going to exploit the comic actors to make it funny. So, this is really a throwback, this film, to the classic low budget, cheap effects, horrors with a lot of laughs. No one should take this too seriously. It should just be a lot of fun.
Yeah, exactly. Despite the marketing, I did catch that, and and even with the Rangers were really goofy. As you had the more serious Ranger, and then you had the one who thinks he knew it all. And,
That's right.
And that's what worked. Their chemistry worked together so well. And then even when the victims are going, oh, there's a guy coming after us. It had that satirization of like 80s to 90s.
You nailed
indie
it.
films,
That's what it
indie,
is.
and I
Yeah.
absolutely loved it.
Complete with cheap dummy gag and the good old bear trap gag. It's like, and I think the real horror fans, if you're a horror geek like me, you love these old films, and you actually appreciate those kinds of gags. And like I said, it just has to be formulated in a properly structured story with good actors who are funny, and the straight people got to play it straight, and the funny people, let them be funny. And that's how I navigated around this. And so I got a lot of laughs in it, and then some really fun kills.
Yeah, exactly. And you got two legends in this film too, making brief appearances. You got Machete himself, Danny Trejo, and Tobin Bell, the legendary Jigsaw. And Tobin Bell's great as the psychiatrist. I mean, he makes the most of his screen time. It's like he can just appear, and any horror fan will just say, oh crap, we gotta see it now. He's in this. It doesn't matter how much time he's in. He's one of those actors you just gotta see him in. How did you get those two to be in this movie?
Well, first off, I've done a few movies with him now. He's just a phenomenal guy. I love him. He should be at the premiere coming next week, and I'm excited to see him. Also an inspiring guy, by the way. If you don't know
Yeah.
his story, this is a man who was in prison with no
Mhm.
semblance of a life in front of him, and he said, I'm going to get sober, I'm going to change my life around, I'm going to not feel sorry for myself,
Yeah.
I'm going to get out of jail, and I'm going to make something of myself. And he did.
Yeah,
And
his documentary is one of the best ever. The Inmate Number One, and I like how they call it the rise of James Trail. Like usually you see the rise and fall, but like he has not fallen. He's just moving up.
oh my, yeah, he's a brand now. You got the donuts, you got the tacos,
Yeah,
you got all kinds of Trejos. Uh,
yeah. And
franchises.
I love the fact that he'll just do anything. He'll act in anything, and he just says, you know what? It's just work to me. I don't care. He doesn't care about the get the divas in Hollywood, but he's far from that. He's just, I'll
Oh,
just do anything. I'll just do it. I just love working. That's what it is to him. And
I
I'm
think
like,
he has the Guinness Book of World Records for the most deaths of any actor in screen history.
wow.
I've certainly killed him a couple times. Yeah, he's legendary. He will go down in history with that record, I'm sure. I don't think it could possibly be touched. And he's just a presence. It's like you want to have a guy like that in a movie like this. And then of course, like you brought up, Tobin Bell is famous for Jigsaw and all the Saw movies. He's another consummate professional. I mean, his attention to detail actually really blew me away. He came to set with an abundance of props and wardrobe pieces, and I was like, wow. And he said, which watch do you think is me? I said, I don't know. let's look at the watches. And he pulled out like 20 watches. And I just haven't experienced that before, where with an actor who comes in with that kind of preparation. Usually they'll say, hey, what does the prop department have? Let's see, I'll pick something from that. But the fact that he brought his own, because as an actor, I can tell you, this is called an inner object. When you have an object that stimulates a certain reaction, an emotional response. So for him, I'm sure something as trivial as a watch would have some meaning. And so that's why he wants to endow the sets with some of his own personal items. It's a really smart device that not a lot of actors know or use, but he's one of them. So a tremendous respect for him. And the only thing we're missing in this movie, and I'm going to say it in case I don't want to meet any false expectations, there is no showdown between Jigsaw and Machete.
Yes, exactly. We
That
don't
would
get
be,
that.
that's another movie, which, by the way, let's call somebody. Having Machete and Jigsaw have a battle would be something to bring in those two characters. But that's not what happens in this movie. They're two completely different characters who have their own lines. But what I will say is Tobin opens and closes the movie. And what kind of a better name for a horror film than the great Tobin Bell to open and close your film, which
Right.
really happens with the opening moment. He's the psychiatrist, and he's working with young AJ, who's having these visions, these memories of this event that happened on Wolf Mountain, and he's got to go back and figure out what really happened to his parents.
Yeah, and that's what made it more intriguing, because you rarely get to see those type of movies where someone's getting visions and they're like, I have to go back and find out what happened, what's going on, and then have everyone else, like all these other people, show up with you. Just like it's like, right then and there, like you mentioned the throwback to the 80s and 90s horror comics. Who's going to get killed in this. Like it kind of brings a light bulb. Yeah, I think we got the fresh crop of
No
victims.
shock there. You know who's going to be the first victim, probably the second victim. And there is a twist. Some people may get it, some people may not at the end.
I gotta say, I think the twist really stunned me. I will say, I'm not gonna spoil it, but it did
Oh,
stun me.
good. Okay.
I was just like,
Gotta have a good
whoa.
twist.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was a good twist. I will say it was
You'll see that as a kind of staple in the horror movies I direct. My first film that I directed, Deathlink, there was a major twist like that at the end, and I worked with that. I worked on that with the writers on both of these. But it's important, I think, to keep the audience guessing, especially when there's a thriller element to these movies, to try and put the pieces together and figure out what happened. So all the movies I've directed so far have a thriller element to them, and even the ones coming up probably so, because I love those kinds of movies.
Yeah, and I gotta say the wolf mask was really cool. Like that, when I first heard the title and I heard something sinister, I'm thinking, oh my God, it's going to be a werewolf movie probably. But I was surprised that it wasn't. I'm actually glad it wasn't. It brought something different. But like that mask looked pretty cool.
Yeah, I gotta tip my hat to the Samuel brothers, Jeff and Greg Samuels, who not only were my stunt coordinators and stunt guys in the film. In fact, the character of Amari, who goes flying off a cliff to his death. Sorry about that, spoiler alert. But he did that stunt. I think that was Jeff Samuels who did that one. It's tough. They're identical twins, so it's tough to remember which one's which, but it's very handy to have identical twin stuntmen who can basically be in two places at the same time. So they did not only the stunts, but they built really that outfit, in conjunction with our wardrobe stylist, Jenna Laterra. And they really created that mask and that whole feel of the Wolfman, and the weapons. They did all that, and the gags, the props, the swords, the bear traps. They built all those rigs. So those guys are hugely valuable to me. They also did Hunt Club for me, and I'll use them anytime I can. Yeah.
That's awesome. So were there any problems that you faced during production, like any issues, like maybe in terms of location, or you felt like you didn't have enough time to get something done? Did anything like that happen at all, or was it pretty smooth?
Well, no, there's a lot of things that went wrong. First of all, things go wrong every movie. You just got to know that as a producer going in, as a director, actor, whatever you are. No, things will go wrong. However, how you handle those things and deal with adversity. I mean, look, the first movie I directed, Deathlink, a little thing called the pandemic happened in the middle of my shoot. I started the movie, there was no pandemic. After week one, the president came on the TV and said there's a pandemic, and we were like, oh God, they're going to shut us down. What do we do? And we cut days and we consolidated locations and we find solutions. So on this one, first off, I'm very proud to say, with all the stunts and all the stuff that we had to deal with on the mountain, nobody got hurt. Although there was one day I heard medic and I thought, oh God, what happened? Where are the stunt guys? One of them crashed into a tree and one of these stunts went wrong. And what happened? I'm like, no, the stunt guys are fine. They are? What's the medic for? The script supervisor fell off her chair.
Oh my God.
9 kills in 8 days. And my one injury is the script supervisor fell off her chair. But that is the one injury we had, and we had them bring in an ice pack and put it on her ankle. It's like, but you can imagine me, I'm dealing with so many moving parts. I'm hearing medic and I'm like, oh God, okay, it happened. What happened? How bad is it? And it's the lady fell off her chair. And the script supervisor's job is to sit in the chair and watch the monitors. And I guess she kind of leaned back or whatever. just fell.
I feel bad. I'm sorry for laughing, but that it's kind of funny.
It's just funny that was the one injury. But no, so on that side, it went unbelievably well. What does happen, so when you rush a shoot, and this is why we don't want to shoot movies in 8 days, and I will never shoot another film in 8 days like this again. You heard it here.
Yep.
If I ever try and go back on that, don't let me.
I won't.
Thank you
I'll
very
hold
much.
You to it. I'm going to hold you to it.
What happens is you make mistakes, and you have to clean those mistakes up in post. So let's go over like a bunch of what I did to make the schedule. First thing I did, which was kind of twofold, is I shot day for night on the mountain. What that means is, if you look at some great classics like Road Warrior / Mad Max, and even The Mandalorian, and these are not low budget things, they shot day for night to give you this weird, eerie, it doesn't look right feel. That's what you get when you shoot day for night, because what you're doing is you're shooting during the day, and then you're doing it in the color correction. You're darkening the environment around you. But it's also very difficult to shoot day for night because you're constantly getting away from the sun. Because as soon as the sun is shining in the background, you're in trouble. It's really hard to darken that. So I was constantly seeing where the sun was and going, everybody this way, and moving to another piece of the mountain. And God bless my cinematographer, Joshua Santana, it was a tough movie to keep up with me because it had to go so fast. I was just like, whatever we mapped out, forget it. We're moving over here now. Because we're too late and now the sun's here. And so it's just, you don't have time to rethink, reblock. You got to do it on the fly. So that was a difficult thing for the shoot. But what happens when you rush your time like that, you miss things. So for example, this all of a sudden is right there in the frame. So I'm like, oh, somebody's phone is in the edge of the frame. So what do I do? Well, the easy fix is you push in the editing room. And that's much easier to do today than it ever was because we shoot in such high resolution. Our cameras now are shooting even in 8K, the Sony Venice. I shot my Joe Baby film in 8K, or we're shooting on like the mini LFs. Those are 5.5K or 4.5K. So you have room to push in without losing resolution and still have a 4K output. So that's my easy fix. Unfortunately, that only helps you so many times. And sometimes there's a battery pack and a wire and a Coke can and a C-stand and a sandbag. Stuff that, like I said, when we're not so rushed, we're catching much more of these. And when we are rushed, we're missing much more of these. So it's my job to clean it up in post. So Wolf Mountain was actually shot, or now it's called The Curse of Wolf Mountain, by the way. That was actually shot the beginning of February 2021. Like I said, we even started before the vaccine came out. We were still dealing with lockdown. We were still dealing with terrible circumstances. I spent a good solid year plus on the post-production in cleaning up a lot of this stuff. Dealing with the day for night color correction took a long time. And visual effects to sometimes paint out some of these items that you can't push in, and I don't have another shot to go to, and the only option is to VFX the mistake away. And so my hat's off to Joshua Santana again. Our cinematographer also did the VFX. So I wanted to keep the VFX to a minimum in this movie and really go back as a throwback to the 80s and 90s, like you were saying, with those good practical kills where we're actually doing the sword gags and we're actually doing on production blood and not leaving that up to a VFX model. But where the VFX came into play mostly was correcting the kinds of mistakes I brought up.
That works. I mean, sometimes you have to do that. But the good news is at least you didn't have to spend $25 million just to remove a mustache like they did with Justice League.
No, we did not.
Because I still have to, every time someone mentions visual effects, I'm like, well, at least you didn't spend that much. I mean, just to remove a mustache. That's
no, we didn't have the budget for it. And Joshua, though, really helped us out with removals mostly.
That works a lot. I gotta say,
and he did some great stuff, like he'd bring in some fog if we needed some extra fog in the mountains and whatever. Those are the kinds of VFX we did, but all the kills were pretty much practical in camera.
That's good. I mean, we miss those, like, we're now getting the practical effects a lot more nowadays, so it works out perfectly.
Now people are scared to do the practicals now because there's so much, especially with stuff like what happened at Rust, with guns. Yeah. People are, I don't even use live ammunition in any of my gun stuff because the insurance is so high now, and it's just so difficult and risky because when something goes wrong, it's a disaster. So those kinds of things have to be VFX today. But these old gags, like I said, the sword through the gut, the bear trap crushing the head, all those kinds of fun things. You can't VFX that.
It would look too fake. I mean, it wouldn't look right.
Yeah.
You gotta go old school. But I mean, like you mentioned, I'm against guns too. Like, using real guns on the set, I'm totally against that. But you can do like a fake body cast and do the sword, do kills like that a lot easier. And that's what I love, those old school horror kills. That's what glad everyone's starting to go back to that route as well.
Yeah.
So with that said, I mean, like I said, this is a great movie, and I think horror fans should definitely like this, especially those who love the 80s and 90s flicks. Even today, they're still doing them. I just recently saw the sequel to Sorority Babes and the Slime Bowl Around, and that was one of the craziest horror comedies I've ever seen. But I saw the sequel just recently, and all these years later, and it's just as fun. What's next for you after this?
Well, there's a lot. So this movie comes out May 9th. Hunt Club, which you already mentioned, that came out on April 4th and is out now on the TVOD platforms. This will move to the TVOD platforms are like Amazon, iTunes, all the pay to rent or buy the films sites. So both these movies will be out first for the next few months on those platforms before they end up on things like Tubi for free. What's next is I have another movie I directed. I did 3 in 3 years as a director, never mind all the ones I produced. That one's called Murder at Hollow Creek. Very excited for that. I'll be in Cannes for the festival market because I've got 10 movies in that market right now selling. So this will be one of them. We hope to have some distribution news shortly on Murder at Hollow Creek. I'm really excited about that one. It's also got Mickey Rourke, who was in Hunt Club with me, and some other great names like Jason Patrick, who's fantastic in it.
Oh yeah.
And some really great kids. Once again, speaking of kids, I got a movie called Karma's a Bitch. And it's got the great Tony Todd, who you'll remember as the Candyman. And Natasha Henstridge. And we're working on a deal for that one now as well. We just finished that one. And Joe Baby, I am in the final weeks of post on. That is a movie that stars Deishan Lockman, who you may know from a show called Severance. That's a big show for Apple. And she was in Jurassic World, which was a big hit last summer. and the 100 and Altered Carbon and Animal Kingdom. Pretty big TV star from those things. So it's her as Joe Baby, Willa Fitzgerald from Reacher as the love interest, and then two icons again, Harvey Keitel and Ron Perlman. And
Nice.
Harvey plays the casino boss that's involved in this cover-up story, and nothing like a great big scene at the Imperial Palace Casino with Harvey walking the casino floor, shaking hands and talking to people as the boss. One of my all-time favorite scenes to shoot. And that was another film I did second unit directing on, but that one's directed by Stephen Brand, and I'm hoping to have an announcement on that soon. So all that's happening, and of course my Western, if anybody who's been keeping up with any of the trades, that we wrapped in January with Tom Hopper from the Umbrella Academy and Heather Graham from Boogie Nights, many other films. That is also, we hope to have an announcement very soon, and we're in post-production on that.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, it's been a busy couple years.
Yeah, you have been keeping busy. I think you and James Cullen Bressack are gonna have some competition, like who's gonna keep the busiest, because you guys, the two of you, have been like extremely busy, like project after project,
A
whether it's
lot.
producing or
Yeah.
directing or everything. So, but you guys, I feel like you guys are like the heroes of the pandemic, because with your busy work and all these movies coming out, I feel like you guys have become like the pandemic heroes of
The
the
gift
industry.
of it breaking out in the middle of one of my films is I said, hey, I just shot one in a pandemic. I guess I can keep shooting. So I had that fear reduced because by chance I had ended up shooting in a pandemic without even knowing I was doing that. So probably I was a little less fearful than a lot of other people who said, I'm not gonna try and shoot in this. And I just kept shooting. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, everyone, The Curse of Wolf Mountain's coming out on May 9th, and I would definitely recommend it, especially if you're a fan of the old school horror comedies from the 80s and 90s. I mean, this is a lot of fun. And David does amazing, not just in front of the camera, but behind the camera as director and
Thanks
everything.
so
So,
much. Appreciate
but
that.
yeah, and thank you so much again for taking the time to talk about it. I had fun talking to you again, and we're definitely going to do this again.
Anytime, man. I enjoy it too. All
All
right.
right. Well, take care. Have a good day.
You too.
All
Bye.
right. Bye.